Have you ever been online just trying to get something done and you hit one of those digital roadblocks? Maybe it's a security check, a page asking you to verify you're not a robot, or sometimes even a pop-up claiming there's an issue, maybe with your connection or your browser, sometimes even your mic.
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. It's almost background noise now, these little checks and balances online.
Exactly. You just want to click past it, right?
Yeah.
Get back to what you are actually doing. They feel routine, almost like a necessary annoyance built into the web.
Designed to stop bots, protect accounts.
Right. But what if? What if the very steps those pages ask you to take, the clicking, the verifying, maybe even those troubleshooting steps, what if they're actually part of a really sophisticated trap? A trap designed to trick you into installing malware.
Yeah, that's not hypothetical anymore, unfortunately. It's a very real and I'd say cutting-edge tactic. It exploits our ingrained behaviors, our trust in things that look familiar online, and that desire we all have for things to just work smoothly. It's less about finding a technical hole and more about manipulating the person in the chair.
And it seems to be working incredibly well, judging by how fast different groups have started using it.
The adoption rate has been remarkable, yeah. It's definitely caught the attention of security researchers and, unfortunately, a lot of attackers, too.
It's quite concerning, really. And before we dive deeper into exactly how this works, we do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor.
Absolutely.
This deep dive is brought to you by Stonefly. Stonefly is a recognized leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and also cloud solutions. Now, in today's digital world with threats like ransomware seemingly everywhere and constantly evolving, having secure, genuinely ransomware-proof storage isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely critical.
It really is fundamental to resilience now.
And Stonefly gets that. They offer really robust solutions, including air-gapped and immutable storage options. These are specifically engineered to protect your critical data from being compromised or encrypted by attackers. So if you're looking for secure storage solutions that you can truly rely on to safeguard your organization,
Which everyone should be.
definitely, then reach out to Stonefly. You can contact their team at sales@stonefly.com, that's sales@stonefly.com, to schedule a demo and see how they can help protect your data.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are peeling back the layers on something that, as we mentioned, has quickly become a major focus for security folks everywhere. The ClickFix social engineering tactic.
That's right. We've been digging into how this technique actually functions, where attackers are deploying it, who exactly is using it, and most important for everyone listening, what we can all do to defend ourselves against it. Our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to give you a clear, detailed, and hopefully actionable understanding of ClickFix. We're going to go beyond just defining it. We want to explore why it's proving so effective, how it's changing and evolving, and what its rapid spread really means for your online security.
Whether you're just using the internet at home or you're responsible for defending an entire organization's network, this is relevant. We'll try to unpack the surprising details and the critical insights that really show how clever and, frankly, how dangerous this approach can be.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then. What exactly is ClickFix? Is it a new virus?
That's a great starting point, and no, it's not a type of malware itself. That's key. Think of ClickFix as the method, the attack chain. It's specifically a highly refined social engineering technique. Its whole purpose, really, is to bypass the usual security hurdles by manipulating you, the user.
Manipulating me how?
By getting you to perform the specific actions needed to execute malicious code on your own computer. It essentially turns you, guided by their deceptive instructions, into the final delivery mechanism for the payload.
Okay, so it's about tricking me into running something bad. How does that initial trick, that deception, usually start?
Well, it often begins with something designed to look routine, or maybe something that creates a sense of urgency. The initial lure could be a fake error message, something popping up saying there's a problem with your browser or a missing plugin maybe. Sometimes it mimics issues with hardware, like your microphone or headset, especially if the fake page looks like, say, a video conferencing tool.
Right, things that seem plausible.
Exactly. But increasingly what the data shows is that the preferred starting point for attackers is something we see constantly online. A fake human verification page.
Ah, like the CAPTCHA tests. Click here if you're not a robot.
Precisely those. Or simulated Cloudflare turnstile pages, those verifying you are human checks that are everywhere now, or maybe pop-ups designed to look like a site's security check or a necessary update. They put a lot of effort into making these look legitimate, just part of the normal flow, something you want to clear quickly to get to the content you're actually after.
Okay, I see those all the time. So I encounter one of these fake pages. What happens next?
Yeah.
This is where the ClickFix part comes in.
This is where it gets really clever and, yeah, quite insidious. When you interact with this fake page, maybe you click a button that says verify, or I'm not a robot, or fix now, or something similar that seems harmless that click initiates the malicious process.
Okay.
And here's the critical step that happens completely behind the scenes without you seeing anything. A malicious command, often a script, maybe PowerShell or VB script, is silently copied directly into your computer's clipboard.
Wow, okay, so I click a button, and without knowing it, some code is now copied, waiting. How do they do that without, like, a warning popping up?
The page uses JavaScript, which runs within your browser, to interact with the clipboard. There are ways for websites to trigger a copy action programmatically, tied to that button click, for instance. And crucially, this specific action doesn't typically trigger the kind of explicit browser permission pop-ups or warnings that might alert you something unusual is happening. It flies under the radar.
So I've clicked the fake button, thinking I'm verifying myself, but now there's this malicious command just sitting in my clipboard. What's the next step in the trap?
Right, this leads to the execution phase. And this part cleverly preys on user familiarity and, frankly, trust in standard Windows functions. The deceptive page, after copying the command, then presents what look like simple, clear instructions. It typically tells you to press the Windows key plus R combination on your keyboard.
Okay, Win plus R. That opens the little run box in Windows, right?
Exactly, the Run dialog box. It's a standard Windows utility used for quickly launching programs or scripts if you know their name or path. Many people have used it maybe for troubleshooting, like typing cmd or msconfig. It feels familiar.
All right, I've used that before. So the page tells me to open that. Then what?
After you open the Run box, the instructions usually tell you to press Schwittel plus V,
Which is paste.
the universal shortcut for pasting whatever is currently in your clipboard. So you, the user, following these seemingly helpful instructions, unknowingly paste that hidden malicious command right into this legitimate Windows utility prompt.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
And then the final instruction is almost always press Enter.
Which runs the command I just pasted.
Precisely. Which executes whatever was pasted into the Run dialog. And that is the genius of it, from the attacker's viewpoint. They've gotten you to execute a legitimate built-in Windows tool. Maybe it's malicious.exe, which runs HTML applications, or PowerShell.exe for running PowerShell scripts. Maybe even bitsadmin.exe, a command line tool often used for file transfers.
So they use normal Windows tools.
Yes, and they get you to paste the malicious command into that tool's prompt and hit Enter. By doing this, they neatly sidestep many traditional security layers.
How does that bypass security software? Shouldn't my antivirus see a malicious script trying to run?
Well, that's where this concept of living off the land binaries, or lolbins, becomes really important. Many security tools, especially older antivirus programs or even some endpoint detection tools, are primarily tuned to detect known malicious files, like a .exe identified as malware, or maybe the execution patterns of programs known to be bad.
Okay.
They might have limited visibility into exactly what's happening inside the browser, or they might see the execution of a standard system binary like mscha.exe or PowerShell.exe as perfectly normal everyday operating system activity. Because, well, usually it is.
So the security software sees me, the user, opening the run box, pasting some text, launching, say, PowerShell.exe, and it just thinks, okay, user's running PowerShell, that happens all the time. It doesn't necessarily look closely at what I pasted.
Exactly. It might not inspect the content of the pasted command deeply enough, or recognize that the script being executed by this legitimate tool is actually malicious. This is especially true if the initial script's main job is just to reach out to a remote server and download the real malware payload after it starts running. The initial execution looks almost benign.
So the attack hides in plain sight. It uses trusted tools, and I'm the one manually bridging the gap between the bad code in the clipboard and actually running it.
Precisely. That manual step, guided by the fake page, is the key part that bypasses security gates focused on stopping automated threats or obviously suspicious files.
And the result is what researchers are calling frictionless malware installation. Frictionless for the attacker anyway.
Exactly. From their perspective, it's incredibly smooth. They don't need to convince you to download a weird file or disable your security software or find some complex technical bug in your browser. They just need you to follow 3 simple, familiar-looking steps. Win plus R, Sutrel plus V, enter.
Yeah, that's really effective. And it explains why we're seeing such a rapid rise in its use.
It absolutely does. It shifts that critical burden of execution onto the user, making it a highly effective and, frankly, easily scalable method for attackers to get that initial foothold on a system.
And this isn't just some niche thing, right? The data shows it's widespread and spreading fast.
Oh, incredibly fast. The tactic, which you might also see referred to as ClearFix in some research, really started gaining traction maybe late 2023, early 2024. Initially, it was spotted being used by groups associated with things like the ClearFake framework, and it was quickly adopted by prominent initial access brokers groups like TA571 in their phishing campaigns.
Often using those HTML files disguised as documents, right?
Yes, that was an early vector. Researchers at Proofpoint were among the first to really dissect it and give it the name ClickFix in their public reports around May 2024.
And from there, it just took off.
It really did. An explosive adoption is the only way to describe it. By June 2024, just weeks later, it was already being observed across a whole range of different malware distribution campaigns. It wasn't just one group. Multiple distinct intrusion sets across the cybercrime world seemed to recognize its potential almost immediately.
Why so fast?
Researchers noted that various threat actors quickly integrated it into their operations, almost certainly because it proved highly successful at evading existing security tools and therefore significantly boosted their infection rates. It just worked better than older methods. We saw tracking data, for example, from Group IB showing a consistent, worrying rise in the number of unique domains hosting these ClickFix pages, climbing steadily from August 2024 right through to mid-February 2025.
But that sustained growth really speaks volumes about its effectiveness in the eyes of the attackers.
It does. It shows it wasn't just a flash in the pan. It's a technique delivering results for them.
And the disguises are getting better too, aren't they?
Yeah.
It wasn't just generic error messages for long.
No, they're constantly refining the lures. It moved quickly from those basic error pop-ups to much more convincing fake CAPTCHA and I'm not a robot pages. Attackers are creating pixel-perfect copies of legitimate verification interfaces now.
Like making it look exactly like a real Cloudflare check.
Exactly. Highly realistic simulations of Cloudflare turnstile, Google reCAPTCHA. The goal is to make the fake page utterly indistinguishable from the real thing at first glance, so you interact without suspicion or hesitation.
So spotting it comes down to tiny, tiny details.
Often, yes. Sometimes the only clue might be incredibly subtle, maybe a minor typo or a slight difference in capitalization in a brand name on the page, or a URL in the address bar that's almost right but not quite. One analysis pointed out a fake Cloudflare page using Cloudflare Challenge with a capital F, while the real branding uses a lowercase f.
Wow.
Most users, especially if they're feeling that verification fatigue or just rushing, would completely miss something like that.
It's like proofreading something you're skimming. You just don't see the small errors.
Yeah, precisely. And attackers aren't stopping at generic checks anymore either. The research shows a really significant shift towards impersonating specific, trusted brands and services, even internal corporate tools. This tailoring makes the lure far more believable to the target.
Can you give some examples? What specific brands or services are they mimicking?
Oh, the variety is quite striking. We've seen reports of fake Google Meet pages, for example. Imagine you're trying to join a meeting, and a pop-up appears claiming there's a technical issue with your microphone or headset, and here are the steps to fix it, which of course involve the Win plus R, She Tool plus V, enter routine.
That targets people working remotely, relying on those tools.
Yeah.
Very clever.
Very. They've also impersonated massive platforms like Google Chrome itself, maybe suggesting an update is needed, Facebook, and popular online tools like PDF Simply for document handling.
So hitting broad user bases there.
Yes, but also getting specific. The material mentioned campaigns impersonating sites related to specialized transport and logistics software, clearly targeting employees in that industry. We've seen fake pages mimicking corporate tools like Notion, which is huge for project management, and Booking.com.
Booking.com again, like that Storm 1865 campaign.
Exactly, likely targeting hospitality workers again, maybe with fake guest review notifications that lead to a ClickFix page.
Okay, so business tools, major platforms. What else?
Cryptocurrency is a big one. Phishing pages designed to look exactly like popular crypto trading platforms are common. They lure users into thinking they need to verify their account or fix a security issue, hoping to trick them into running commands that ultimately lead to infostealers designed to grab wallet keys or exchange credentials.
High-value targets there.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole world of entertainment and software. Fake sites related to video games, specific titles like Lunacy, Calypso, Battleforge, Ragging Game were used as lures. Fake office software activation sites are another angle. Lures targeting users of Web3 applications, specific niche Web3 browsers like Sleipnir, even messaging apps like Nortex.
It feels like they're trying to cover every possible online activity.
They really are, and they're localizing it too. We saw examples of variants translated into specific languages, like that phishing site designed to look like an Armenian police website. This shows they're tailoring the attack not just by interest group, but geographically as well.
And even the instructions are changing.
Yeah, subtly. Moving beyond just plain text lists to sometimes using more graphical layouts, maybe integrating the steps visually into the fake interface to make it look even more like a user-friendly wizard or troubleshooting guide rather than just pasting code into a box. Every element is designed to reduce suspicion.
Okay, so the disguises are sophisticated, they're targeted, they look legitimate. How do users actually get to these pages? It's not just random chance, right? Attackers have to drive traffic.
Exactly right. The ClickFix execution part is clever, but it's useless if nobody lands on the fake page. So attackers use multiple methods, multiple attack vectors, to funnel potential victims towards these lures. Understanding these pathways is really key for you, the listener, to grasp where the risks actually lie in your day-to-day online activity.
Let's talk about malvertising first. Malicious ads. How does that fit in?
Malvertising is a huge channel for ClearFix distribution. Attackers buy ad space. Sometimes it might even appear on legitimate sites if the ad network's filtering fails, but it's a far more common on sites offering content that attracts users looking for, let's say, free stuff.
Like pirated movies or cracked software.
Exactly. Pirated movie streaming sites, game download sites, sites offering cracked versions of popular software, video downloaders. These are hotspots. The malicious ads placed on these sites can either directly redirect your browser to a ClickFix landing page when clicked, or sometimes they trigger deceptive pop-ups that lead you there.
And the sites hosting these ads, they might not care.
Often their main goal is ad revenue, so they might have very lax filtering on the ads they display. And even the ad networks themselves can struggle to detect and block these constantly evolving malicious campaigns before they reach users.
So you're browsing one of these potentially risky sites, click an ad, or maybe just click anywhere on the page, and suddenly you're redirected to a fake verify you're human page.
Precisely. Sometimes these sites use really aggressive tactics too, like placing invisible buttons over content or even hijacking your browser's back button, so trying to leave just redirects you again, maybe to the ClickFix page or another malicious site. It's a funnel.
That sounds incredibly frustrating and dangerous. What about phishing? Still a major vector.
Definitely. Classic phishing, especially via email, remains significant. We already mentioned those early campaigns using HTML attachments disguised as documents. But we also saw specific examples like the Storm 1865 campaign targeting the hospitality industry emails pretending to be from Booking.com about guest reviews, containing an HTML attachment which, when opened, rendered the ClickFix page.
And more targeted spear phishing, too.
Yes. Highly tailored emails sent to specific individuals or organizations are used. Again, often with an HTML attachment that opens directly into the ClickFix lure. And the instructions on these spear phishing pages can be especially deceptive. For example, one campaign delivered this way told users to run a command that looked like a normal network fix, like ipconfig flushstains.
Which sounds harmless, right?
To many users, yes. They might have even used that command legitimately before. But in the ClickFix context, pasting the hidden malicious script first and then running ipconfig flushstains via the run box actually triggers the malicious script, which then goes on to download the real payload. In that specific campaign, the payload was the Darkgate malware.
So they make the bad action look like a helpful, normal computer task.
Wow. It adds that extra layer of plausibility. And then you have the social media angle, which is particularly concerning. The material highlighted platforms like TikTok being used effectively.
Right. The TikTok campaign, how does that work?
This is a perfect example of attackers adapting to where users spend their time and how they consume information. They create short videos, sometimes using those AI-generated avatars to seem more legitimate or anonymous, that pose as helpful tutorials.
Tutorials for what?
All sorts of things. How to activate expensive software like Windows or Microsoft Office for free, how to unlock premium features on popular apps like Spotify or the video editor CapCut Pro, or just generic tips to supposedly boost your PC's performance.
Okay.
The crucial part is that the video tutorial explicitly walks the viewer through the ClickFix steps. It shows them opening the run box, Win plus R, pasting something, Ctrl plus V, and hitting enter, framing it as a necessary step to achieve the promised benefit: the free software, the premium features, the speed boost.
That's really insidious because those short-form video tutorials often feel very casual, maybe trustworthy, like getting advice from a peer.
It absolutely leverages that informal, user-generated content feel. And beyond malvertising and phishing, you also have compromised websites and entirely fake ones being used.
How does that work?
Threat actors find vulnerabilities in legitimate websites. Often older WordPress sites are targets, and they inject malicious JavaScript code. This injected code can either display the fake ClickFix CAPTCHA or verification directly on the compromised site, making it look like part of that site's normal function. Or, more often, it silently redirects visitors to infrastructure fully controlled by the attackers, where the ClickFix lure is hosted.
So even a site I trust could potentially redirect me?
It's possible if it's been compromised. Or attackers simply register brand new domain names and build websites specifically designed to host these lures. They might use names that look very similar to legitimate services. We saw examples like meet.google.com-join.us trying to mimic the real Google Meet URL. And sometimes they use SEO poisoning tactics.
What's that?
Techniques to manipulate search engine results. They try to make their malicious, fake sites rank highly in Google or Bing searches for terms people commonly use when looking for risky things, like cracked software download, free movie stream, or specific game cheats. So someone searches for that, clicks a top result, and lands right on the ClickFix trap.
They're really covering all the bases for driving traffic.
They are, and this multi-channel approach connects to who they're targeting. The malvertising on sketchy sites hits users already taking risks. Phishing campaigns can be laser-focused on industries like hospitality or specific roles like software developers, using fake GitHub issue notifications, for instance. The social media spam targets users looking for those quick fixes or freebies, maybe younger users or those less technically aware. It's a broad net, cast using increasingly specific and tailored bait.
Okay, so the trap is set, the user is lured in, they follow the Win plus R, Ctrl plus V, enter steps. The malicious script runs. What happens next? What is the ultimate goal? What payloads are actually being delivered?
Right. Once that initial script gets executed by the legitimate Windows tool, Meshta, PowerShell, etc., its main job usually isn't to be the final malware itself. It's typically a downloader or a dropper. Its function is to reach out to the attacker's command and control server, C2, and fetch the real malicious payload, then execute that.
And what kinds of payloads are most common?
By far, the most prevalent type of malware delivered via ClickFix, based on the research we've seen, are information stealers or info stealers.
Okay, what do those do?
Info stealers are designed to covertly hoover up sensitive data from the compromised machine. They look for things like usernames and passwords saved in web browsers or other applications, browser cookies, which are really valuable because they can let attackers hijack your active login sessions without needing the password.
So they could just log in as you.
Potentially, yes, to websites you were already logged into. They also hunt for cryptocurrency, wallet files or credentials, maybe sensitive documents stored locally. They're essentially digital thieves focused on grabbing any data that could be valuable and monetized.
And the material mentions specific names of info stealers being delivered this way.
Yes, quite a few prominent ones. Campaigns have been seen dropping Stealic, Radamanthes, Luma Stealer, also known as Luma C2, Vidar, and another one called StealC. And it's not just Windows for macOS users targeted by ClickFix. We've seen Mac-specific stealers like Amos Stealer and another called Apple Process Hub Stealer being delivered.
So platform-specific stealers, too.
Right. And attackers are also deploying newer, more sophisticated info stealers via ClickFix, like Eddie Stealer and Cat Stealer. This shows that even developers of cutting-edge malware see ClickFix as an effective delivery vector.
But it's not only about stealing information, right? Are other types of malware delivered?
Definitely. The technique is versatile. Remote access tools, or RTs, are also frequently delivered payloads.
What do RTs allow attackers to do?
RATs essentially give the attacker persistent remote control over the compromised computer. They can monitor everything the user does, turn on the webcam or microphone, steal files directly, install more malware, or use the victim's machine as a launchpad for attacking other systems on the network. It's like having a hidden backdoor.
Any specific RETs mentioned?
Yes, the research noted several, including Matin-Bucus, Darkgate, NetSupport RAT, which is actually based on legitimate remote support software, making it harder to detect, Xworm, Venomrat, Asyncrat, and Danabot.
You mentioned Darkgate earlier with that A/B testing observation.
That's right. One analysis highlighted a campaign where the attackers were distributing Darkgate using both ClickFix and a more traditional method, like a direct download link, seemingly at the same time. This strongly suggests they were actively comparing the success rates A/B testing to see which delivery method was more effective for them.
That really highlights their confidence in ClickFix, or at least their interest in its potential.
It absolutely does. It shows a level of operational maturity and a focus on optimizing their infection methods. Beyond R8s, other payloads include malware designed to add your computer to a botnet.
A network of zombie computers.
Essentially, yes. A network of compromised machines controlled remotely by attackers, often used for large-scale tasks like launching distributed denial of service, DDoS attacks against websites, or sending out massive volumes of spam email. And finally, ClickFix is also used to deliver ransomware loaders.
So, not the ransomware itself initially, but something that installs it.
Correct. These loaders are the first stage, designed to get onto the system, perhaps establish persistence, and then download and execute the actual ransomware payload that encrypts the victim's files. One specific loader mentioned being delivered via ClickFix was Latrodectus, which is known to be linked to the Isidide malware family, and Isidide often serves as a precursor to ransomware deployment.
Okay, can we dive a bit deeper into the technical details?
Yeah.
After I hit enter in the run box, how does that initial script actually fetch and run, say, an info stealer?
Sure. On a Windows system, that initial script executed by, say, msha.exe or PowerShell.exe is almost always heavily obfuscated. That means the code is deliberately scrambled and disguised to make it hard for security software to analyze or recognize as malicious.
Okay.
This obfuscated script typically doesn't contain the final malware payload itself.
No.
Its primary function is usually networking. It will reach out to the attacker's command and control C2 server over the internet. It might download the next stage, which could be another script, maybe a malicious DLL file, or the final executable payload itself. Legitimate Windows tools like bitsadmin.exe, the background intelligent transfer service command line utility, are often abused by these scripts to perform the downloads stealthily.
So it uses one built-in tool, imsta or PowerShell, to run a script that uses another built-in tool, bitsadmin, to download the real malware.
Exactly. It's a chain leveraging legitimate components. One analysis detailed a script named SmokeSaber, delivered via ClickFix, which used multiple layers of obfuscation and relied on both Mishapta and bitsadmin to eventually download and execute the Luma C2 info stealer.
That's quite involved. What about for Mac users? How does it work there?
The process is similar in concept but uses macOS mechanisms. The ClickFix page targeting a Mac user might trigger the download of a disk image file, a .dmg file, which contains the Mac-specific malware like EmoStealer. The download might happen when the user clicks the deceptive button, and the instructions might then guide the user on how to open that .dmg file and run an application or script inside it.
So it still relies on user interaction after the download.
Yes. Sometimes this download is orchestrated through specific web endpoints on the attacker server, like a kusaka.php endpoint that was observed serving malware for macOS targets. Alternatively, the instructions might tell the Mac user to open the terminal application and paste and run a command line script there, similar to the runbox method on Windows but using macOS shell commands.
And those advanced techniques you mentioned, like DLL sideloading.
Right, particularly in that sophisticated TikTok campaign analysis for Windows. DLL sideloading is a technique where attackers place a malicious DLL file in a location where a legitimate application will load it instead of the legitimate DLL it was expecting. So when the user runs the legitimate application, it inadvertently loads and executes the attacker's malicious code from the DLL. This can be very sneaky because the process that appears to be running is the legitimate application, not something obviously malicious.
And those newer info stealers, Eddie Stealer and Cat Stealer, what makes them advanced?
The research highlights their focus on overcoming modern browser security. For example, browsers like Chrome try to encrypt stored cookies and passwords to make them harder to steal. Eddie Stealer, written in Rust, includes code specifically designed to try and decrypt this data, possibly using techniques derived from known tools like Chromecats. Cat Stealer, written in C, uses methods like injecting malicious code directly into browser processes, DLL injection, to access sensitive data like passwords or session tokens while they're being used in memory, bypassing storage encryption altogether. Eddie Stealer was even seen doing things like spawning invisible browser instances completely off-screen just to interact with websites using stolen cookies and extract data without the user ever seeing it. This use of modern languages like Rust and C, plus these advanced evasion and data theft techniques, shows how quickly malware authors are adapting and incorporating ClickFix into their distribution for even their most capable tools.
So it's clear Windows is a huge target, but ClickFix isn't just a Windows problem.
Absolutely not. While Windows systems are definitely the most heavily targeted, ClickFix tactics are demonstrably successful against macOS users as well, mainly delivering those Mac-specific info stealers. And we saw mention of at least one campaign using a similar lure of fake CPU update targeting Linux users. Even mobile devices, Android and iOS, aren't immune. They can encounter ClickFix-style tactics through malicious browser redirects or attempts at drive-by downloads initiated from these deceptive pages. The scope is definitely cross-platform.
Okay, this is a highly adaptable, effective technique used to drop some really nasty payloads. Who exactly is behind all this? Who are the threat actors adopting ClickFix?
The intelligence points to a pretty diverse range of actors. A lot of the campaigns seem to be run by what you might call standard cybercrime groups. Their main goal is usually financial, stealing money directly, stealing credentials for valuable accounts like banking or crypto, or deploying ransomware for a payout.
So financially motivated cybercriminals.
Yes, that's a large component. But we also see more specialized players involved, particularly in driving the traffic. The research highlights the role of Traffers teams or affiliates.
Traffers teams, what are they?
These are groups within the cybercrime ecosystem that specialize purely in generating huge volumes of traffic and directing it towards malicious landing pages, like these ClickFix lures. They might not develop the malware or the lures themselves, but they're experts at distribution using methods like malvertising, SEO poisoning, or spam.
Any specific Traffers teams name?
Yes, the analysis mentioned groups like Slavic Nation Empire, or SNE, which is apparently a subgroup linked to a larger entity called Marco Polo. Another one was Skemkrateo team, reportedly linked to CryptoLove. These groups seem particularly active in campaigns targeting users interested in cryptocurrency and Web3 platforms, and they're often associated with the broader Russian-speaking cybercrime community.
And these teams sound quite organized.
Very much so. The research suggests a high degree of organization and even collaboration between them. They often seem to use the same underlying ClickFix page templates, sometimes referred to internally as a landing project, and might share parts of the backend infrastructure used for hosting the lures and tracking victims. This points towards them potentially using common tools or services provided by a supplier higher up in the cybercrime chain.
Like a shared toolkit.
Kind of, yeah. And their organization extends to operations, too. They heavily use Telegram bots to manage their campaigns, tracking visitor numbers, clicks, successful compromises, or installs, as they might call them. Some analyses even included snippets of communications recovered from these bots, showing alleged developers and affiliates, individuals using handles like Sparkhash or Alex Sokman associated with SNE were mentioned discussing campaign progress and technical details.
So it operates like a distributed illicit business.
In many ways, yes, with different specialists handling traffic generation, lure creation, payload management, and monetization. We also see initial access brokers, IABs, using ClickFix.
Groups like TA571 you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. IABs specialize in gaining that first foothold into a network or system, and then selling that access to other criminal groups, perhaps ransomware gangs or espionage actors. The fact that established IABs like TA571 have incorporated ClickFix into their methods shows they see it as a reliable way to achieve that initial breach, which they can then monetize.
Okay, so cybercriminals, specialized traffers, initial access brokers, and then, perhaps most alarmingly, the research indicates nation-state groups are using it too.
That is indeed a very concerning trend highlighted in the material. The fact that sophisticated state-sponsored actors, advanced persistent threat, or APT groups are adopting ClickFix really underscores how effective they judge this technique to be. These groups usually have specific strategic goals like espionage, intellectual property theft, or sabotage, and they tend to adopt the most successful and reliable tactics available, even if those tactics are also used by common criminals.
Which specific state-backed groups have been seen using ClickFix?
The research specifically mentioned Muddy Water, which is widely attributed to Iran and focuses on cyber espionage. They were documented using ClickFix in campaigns targeting Armenian organizations, reportedly using that phishing site mimicking an Armenian police website showing very tailored targeting.
Okay, Muddy Water. Any others?
Yes. APT-28, also known as Fancy Bear, a group linked to Russia's GRU military intelligence agency and known for very aggressive cyber operations, has also been documented using ClickFix. Specifically, they used it in attacks targeting the Ukrainian government. One analysis detailed the entire attack chain, starting from a phishing email, leading through the ClickFix execution using the runbox, and ultimately resulting in the attackers gaining a persistent remote shell on the compromised system.
Wow. So why would these highly sophisticated APT groups, with all their resources, use a technique that's also being used by, less advanced cybercriminals?
It comes down to effectiveness and efficiency, as the analysis suggests. ClickFix works reliably well at bypassing those initial security layers that focus on blocking malicious files or automated exploits. Because it relies on deceiving the human user and leverages legitimate built-in system tools, those logins, it can be effective regardless of how technically sophisticated the target's defenses are to some extent.
So if the user falls for the trick,
If the user can be tricked into performing the Win plus R, Ctrl plus V, enter sequence, the initial execution is achieved. That bypasses security that's looking for a malicious object or an automated process. It provides a low-friction path to getting code running on the endpoint, and that initial access is valuable to any attacker, whether their goal is stealing bank details or state secrets. Its success rate makes it attractive across the board.
okay, this gives us a really comprehensive picture. ClickFix, a social engineering tactic, not malware itself, uses fake verification or error pages, tricks users into copying a script and running it via the runbox using Win plus R, Ctrl plus V, enter, leverages legitimate tools like Menschta or PowerShell, delivers nasty payloads like info stealers and RATs, used by everyone from common criminals and specialized traffers to IABs and even state-sponsored APT groups. It's clever, adaptable, widespread, and dangerous.
That's a very good summary.
So the million-dollar question, given how it works, how it bypasses traditional defenses by targeting the user, what can individuals and organizations actually do to defend against this?
That is indeed the critical question. And because it's so heavily reliant on social engineering, the absolute first and most crucial line of defense has to be user education and developing a strong sense of awareness and skepticism.
Awareness of what specifically? What are the key red flags people should look out for?
Extreme skepticism towards unexpected prompts is vital. Be highly suspicious of any pop-up or page that appears suddenly, claims there's a technical issue or error, or asks you to perform verification steps, especially if those steps involve running commands, opening system utilities like the runbox, or copying and pasting things you didn't type yourself.
So pause before clicking verify or fix.
Absolutely. Pause and scrutinize. And always, always verify the URL in your browser's address bar. Don't just look at the page content, which can be faked perfectly. Check the actual domain name. Is it spelled correctly? Does it look slightly off? Attackers rely on subtle differences that are easy to miss if you're rushing.
Okay, check the URL carefully. What else?
Be cautious about clicking links or opening attachments from unexpected or unknown sources. Emails, social media messages, forum posts, ads on sketchy websites. And this is perhaps the most important point. Never blindly run commands provided by a website, a video tutorial from an unknown source, or an email, unless you are absolutely certain you understand precisely what that command does and you trust the source implicitly, which is almost never the case online. Do not paste it into the runbox, PowerShell, or terminal and execute it.
Just don't do the copy-paste run thing if prompted by a website.
Pretty much. Be extremely wary of any online source asking you to copy something to your clipboard and then paste it into a system utility and hit enter. That sequence itself should be a massive red flag now.
And given that info stealers are such common payloads, basic security hygiene becomes even more critical, right?
Exactly. Strong, unique passwords for every online account are essential. Use a reputable password manager to generate and store them securely. Don't reuse passwords, and don't rely on your browser's built-in password saving, which stealers often target. Enable multi-factor authentication, MFA, everywhere you possibly can. Even if attackers manage to steal your password via ClickFix, MFA provides a crucial second barrier that can stop them from actually logging into your accounts.
And avoiding risky downloads.
Yes, definitely reiterate caution when searching for or downloading free software, cracked games, or other pirated content. Those environments are breeding grounds for malvertising and ClickFix lures. Stick to official sources.
Okay, that covers individual awareness and hygiene. What about technical defenses for organizations? Since basic antivirus might miss the initial execution, what else can be done?
The analysis points to several layers of technical controls. First, robust email security filtering is crucial. Blocking phishing emails with malicious links or those HTML attachments before they even reach users is key. Technologies like DMARC, DKIM, and SBF help validate email sources and filter spam and phishing.
What about on the endpoint itself?
Deploying advanced endpoint detection and response, EDR, or even extended detection and response, XDR solutions, is highly recommended. Unlike traditional antivirus that relies heavily on known signatures, EDR/XDR focuses on behavioral analysis. It monitors what processes are doing, what network connections they're making, what files they're accessing. It might detect the suspicious behavior of the script executed by Mishta or PowerShell, or the actions of the subsequently downloaded payload, even if it missed the initial win plus R step. Sandboxing capabilities can also help analyze suspicious execution chains safely.
And you mentioned restricting those low bins, the legitimate tools that get abused.
Yes, organizations can use group policy or endpoint security software to restrict or at least closely monitor the execution of commonly abused scripting tools and binaries like mshtay.exe, PowerShell.exe, wscript.exe, bitsadmin.exe, etc. The discussion specifically highlighted the potential effectiveness of using Windows firewall rules pushed via group policy to block outbound internet connections from these specific binaries, especially over common web ports like 80 HTTP and 443 HTTPS.
Why block outbound?
Because, as we discussed, the initial script executed via ClickFix often needs to connect out to the internet to download the actual malware payload. If you prevent mshtay.exe or PowerShell.exe from making those outbound connections via the firewall, you can effectively break the attack chain at that stage, stopping the payload download. Of course, organizations need to carefully test this, as some legitimate applications or scripts might rely on these tools having internet access, but it's a powerful targeted defense.
That makes a lot of sense. Any other technical measures?
Implementing strict software execution policies is beneficial. Application whitelisting, where only explicitly approved applications and scripts are allowed to run, is highly effective but can be challenging to manage. Blocking known malicious indicators of compromise, IOCs, bad domain names, IP addresses, file hashes associated with ClickFix campaigns, shared through threat intelligence feeds is also crucial for proactive defense.
And complementing the tech with training.
Absolutely essential. Regular, up-to-date security awareness training for all employees, specifically covering modern social engineering threats like ClickFix, explaining the lures, the win plus R trick, and reinforcing skepticism is just as important as any technical control.
What about individuals at home? Beyond awareness, what technical steps can they take?
Using a good, reputable antivirus or endpoint protection suite is still important. Make sure it's kept updated and that features like behavioral detection or heuristics are enabled, not just basic signature scanning. As mentioned, only download software from official websites or trusted app stores. Avoid those third-party download portals. Using a browser extension like an ad blocker can also significantly reduce exposure to malvertising, which is a major ClickFix vector.
Should people disable the run dialog?
That's probably too restrictive for most users as it has legitimate uses. But simply understanding what it is, how it works, and internalizing the danger of pasting and running anything in it that comes from an untrusted online source is the key takeaway. Treat that win plus R, Ctrl plus V, enter sequence prompted by a website as extremely suspicious.
Okay, final scenario. What if someone realizes, maybe just after hitting enter, oh no, I think that page was fake.
Yep.
What should they do immediately?
Time is critical. The material outlines the immediate steps. First, isolate the machine. Disconnect it from the internet. Immediately physically unplug the network cable or turn off the Wi-Fi. This stops the malware from potentially downloading more components, communicating with the attacker, or sending stolen data out.
Okay, disconnect. Then what?
Assume the worst. Assume that machine is compromised and any data on it, especially credentials, saved passwords, cookies, is potentially stolen. Using a different clean computer or device, change the passwords for all important online accounts that you might have accessed from the compromised machine, email, banking, social media, everything. Enable MFA on all those accounts if you haven't already.
Monitor accounts too.
Yes, start closely monitoring bank accounts, credit cards, and other financial services for any unauthorized activity. For an organization, this situation warrants immediate escalation to their security team or engaging an external digital forensics and incident response (DFIR) provider to properly investigate the scope, contain the breach, and eradicate the malware. Don't just try to run a quick antivirus scan and hope for the best.
Right, professional help is needed for businesses.
Definitely.
This deep dive has really illuminated how cyber threats are constantly shifting, haven't they? ClickFix is such a prime example of attackers focusing on human psychology and exploiting our ingrained behaviors, maybe even more than finding complex technical flaws.
It really is. It represents a significant and clearly effective evolution in social engineering tactics. By cleverly turning the user into the unwitting final step in the malware delivery process, it neatly bypasses many security controls that are designed to catch automated attacks or known bad files. And its incredibly rapid adoption by everyone from common criminals right up to nation-state APTs tells you just how potent they find it for getting that initial foothold.
And it preys on our modern online habits, doesn't it? We live in this age of information overload, constant digital interaction where verification steps are commonplace, often frustrating, and something we just want to get through quickly. ClickFix thrives in that environment of routine clicks and verification fatigue.
It absolutely exploits the very routines we perform online every day. And it really blurs the lines, doesn't it? From the user's perspective, being asked to press Win+R, paste something, and hit Enter might feel like a legitimate troubleshooting step guided by the website. It makes distinguishing between a normal system action and a malicious one incredibly difficult in the moment.
Which leads to a really challenging question for the future, I think. How do we build digital systems, design user interfaces, and deploy security tools that can effectively make that distinction, stopping the malicious use of legitimate functions without adding so much friction that it makes everything unusable?
That's the tightrope, isn't it? And maybe more fundamentally, how do we better empower users to navigate this landscape? How do we train that critical thinking, that moment of pause and scrutiny when faced with these increasingly deceptive lures? We all want frictionless online experiences, easier logins, faster checks, and there are clear benefits to that.
But does that push for frictionless inadvertently create these new kinds of attack surfaces? Does reducing the points where a user might naturally pause and think actually make tactics like ClickFix more effective?
It's a really tough balance to strike, and ClickFix demonstrates very clearly that attackers are watching, learning, and actively exploiting the challenges we face in finding that balance. It's a constant evolution.
A complex challenge, and definitely something for all of us to think about. That brings us to the end of this deep dive into the ClickFix social engineering tactic. Thank you so much for joining us and walking us through it.
My pleasure. It's a crucial threat to understand right now.
And we want to thank our sponsor one last time, Stonefly. As a leader in enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions, they understand the critical need for security. If you're looking for secure, truly ransomware-proof storage options, including air-gapped and immutable storage designed to protect your data, even if your network is compromised, we encourage you to reach out to them.
Definitely worth investigating their solutions.
You can contact Stonefly directly at sales@stonefly.com. That's sales@stonefly.com to schedule a demo and discuss your specific security needs. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the critical topics shaping our digital world.